Welcome to the second part of our Grammar Refresher series. My name is Rebecca Alvarado, and this presentation will be about different types of sentences, such as simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. This presentation was developed by the TAMIU ARC graduate writing consultant, Franco Zamora. First, we will discuss what a sentence is and what it consists of. A correct, complete sentence must contain an independent clause. Independent clauses consist of a subject and a predicate. Remember that independent clauses express a complete thought. Sentence subjects are nouns. The subject is the person, place, or thing doing the action of the independent clause. You'll typically find the sentence subject at the beginning of the sentence. Sentence predicates contain the main verb of the sentence. The predicate is the action being done. Like sentence subjects, you'll usually, but not always, find predicates at the beginning of the sentence. Let's try an example. In the sentence, I walked, I is considered the subject, and walked is a complete predicate. Note that predicates are also called the complete main verb phrase of the sentence. More complicated sentences might contain complete predicates with more words. These predicates can include adjectives, adverbs, and other modifiers. Next, we move to conjunctions. Conjunctions join ideas together. There are two main types, coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions join ideas, nouns, verbs, and independent clauses. There are 7 coordinating conjunctions, and these include for, and, nor, but, or, and so. To join 2 independent clauses together, you will need a comma and a coordinating conjunction to form a compound sentence. Subordinating conjunctions introduce or offer subordinate clauses, also known as dependent clauses. You'll often find subordinating conjunctions used as transitional words. Some examples include however, although, moreover, nevertheless, because, even so, and whereas. Unlike coordinating conjunctions, the only way you can join 2 independent clauses to create a compound sentence is by using a semicolon. This is because semicolons are strong enough to join compound sentences even without a conjunction. Many subordinating conjunctions can also be described as conjunctive adverbs, which do not mark the presence of a subordinating conjunction. Clauses and phrases are similar in function but are grammatically distinct. Clauses will always contain a subject and a verb, but only independent clauses will express a complete thought. Phrases do not contain a subject and a verb, so they might contain one without the other. They might also contain a mix of other parts of speech. Try this example. After the war, I went back to New York. Can you identify the phrase, the independent clause, the adverb, and the prepositional phrase? Feel free to pause the video at this time to try it out. The phrase in this sentence is after the war. The independent clause in this sentence is I went. The adverb is back, and the prepositional phrase is to New York. Clauses and phrases can be challenging to distinguish, so feel free to refer back to this guide if you're feeling stuck. Now we will discuss the subject, verb, object sentence structure. Remember that complete sentences are made up of subjects and verbs, but they can also have objects. Objects are nouns or noun phrases that are acted on by the verb in the sentence. One example is I ate pizza. Try to identify the noun, the verb, and the object. You may pause the video at this time to work out this example. In this example, I is the subject, ate is the verb, and pizza is the object being acted upon. Notice how in the subject-verb-object structure, the subject comes first, the verb comes second, and the object comes third. Nouns can also be an object of a prepositional phrase. An example of this is I walked into the house. Into is a preposition. The noun house is the object of the preposition. Into the house is a prepositional phrase that gives direction for the sentence. Dependent clauses, sometimes called subordinating clauses, are not complete sentences. Unlike independent clauses, they do not express a complete thought. Dependent clauses may act as parts of a sentence without being able to stand on their own. Note that a dependent clause without an independent clause is called a sentence fragment, which is an error and an incomplete sentence. There are many kinds of dependent clauses. The most common kinds include adverb clauses, adjective clauses, and noun clauses, to name a few. Like it was mentioned before, fragments are incomplete and erroneous versions of a sentence. You'll sometimes find sentence fragments made up of dependent clauses. When you have a dependent clause with a subordinating conjunction at the beginning of a sentence, this might indicate a fragmented sentence. To recap the difference between an independent and dependent clause, take a look at the following example. I worried is an independent clause. I is the subject, worried is the verb. This independent clause expresses a complete thought and is considered a complete sentence. When I worried is a dependent clause. I as a subject, worried is a verb. This dependent clause does not express a complete thought and is not considered a complete sentence. Now we move on to the most basic type of sentence, a simple sentence. Simple sentences have a single independent clause and no dependent clause. Note that simple sentences are identifiable by a single subject-verb pair. Identify the subjects, verbs, objects, adverbs, adjectives, and prepositional phrases in the following examples. I ate breakfast. I always eat breakfast. After my shower, I happily ate a delicious breakfast of a spinach omelet, orange juice, and grapefruit. You may pause the video at this time to work on this example. I ate contains a subject and a verb. I ate breakfast contains a subject, verb, and an object. I always eat breakfast contains a subject, verb, adverb, and object. After my shower, I happily ate a delicious breakfast of a spinach omelet, orange juice, and grapefruit. Contains a subject, verb, adverb, object, two prepositional phrases, an adjective, and an object list of nouns. Notice how each sentence gets increasingly more descriptive. Despite this, all of these sentences are simple because they only have one subject-verb pair. Compound sentences are another type of sentence made up of two independent clauses. When a sentence is made up of more than one independent clause, each independent clause must express a complete thought. That is to say, if the independent clauses were separated from each other using a period or a sentence-ending punctuation, they should count as sentences of their own. Generally, only independent clauses that are related to each other in some way should be joined to create a compound sentence. Compound sentences can be joined in one of two ways. They can be joined using a conjunction and a comma, or they can be joined using a semicolon. The following are examples of compound sentences with a respective punctuation. I never go hiking. I enjoy biking. She pursued her goals and she succeeded. I couldn't see the stars, so I drove to the city outskirts. Dogs are good, but cats are also good. Worrying makes sleep hard. There are many factors that contribute to insomnia. Can you think of your own compound sentences? Complex sentences are another type of sentence. They are made up of one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. Remember that dependent clauses cannot stand on their own, and they can appear anywhere in the sentence. Take a look at these examples of complex sentences. Can you identify the dependent clauses? You may pause the video to work this out. In this first example, even though I'm always mean to, I often forget to eat breakfast. Even though I always mean to is considered the dependent clause or subordinating clause. In the second example, because of the changing nature of language, slang continues to evolve all over the world. Because of the changing nature of language is the dependent clause. In too many desserts will ruin your appetite, although I sometimes sneak one anyway. Although I sometimes sneak one anyway is a dependent clause. In the next example, they hoped that, in spite of all the odds seeming against them, they would win the race. In spite of all the odds seeming against them is a dependent clause. In our final example, finally, beginning in March, the trade network which Germany set up last year will begin taking orders online, allowing it to expand globally. Finally, beginning in March, which Germany set up last year, and allowing it to expand globally are the dependent clauses. Notice how each of these examples contain one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. Therefore, all of these examples are considered complex sentences. Compound complex sentences are another type of sentence. While complex sentences contain one independent clause, compound complex sentences contain two independent clauses. Like complex sentences, compound complex sentences contain at least one dependent clause. Remember that a sentence with any more than two independent clauses is considered a run-on sentence. Identify the dependent clauses in these compound complex sentences. You may pause the video now if you'd like to work on these examples. Our first example is, the key into the room that I need to get into today is bronze. Despite my best attempts to stop it, I can't believe I let that bird steal that from me. The dependent clauses here are that I need to get into today and despite my best attempts to stop it. Our second example is, whatever happened between us, I want you to know that there are no hard feelings, but I understand if you don't want to talk to me right now, especially after everything that happened. The dependent clause in this sentence are whatever happened between us and especially after everything that happened. Our next example is, however long it takes, we are committed to improving our software, for improvement is our main mission at this company. This example only has one dependent clause, which is however long it takes. Our final example is, there are millions of cells in the human body. Scientists who are propelled by the need to understand the world are discovering more and more about how we work each day. Who are propelled by the need to understand the world is a dependent clause in the sentence. Notice how these examples contain at least one dependent clause and two independent clauses, which characterizes compound complex sentences. Now let's talk about some other ways to categorize sentences. There are four kinds of sentences: declarative, interrogative, exclamatory, and imperative. These kinds of sentences may be easily identifiable by the type of punctuation used. A declarative sentence is a sentence that makes a statement. Normally, you will see these kinds of sentences end in a period. An interrogative sentence is a sentence that asks a question. Interrogative sentences normally end in question marks. An exclamatory sentence is a sentence that expresses excitement or emphasis. These kinds of sentences end in an exclamation mark. An imperative sentence is a sentence that makes a request, a demand, an offer, or offers instruction. Imperative sentences end with a period. Imperative sentences may have an invisible or unseen sentence subject, which is often the reader or you. An example of this is, walk to the store and buy me some milk. This is considered an imperative sentence because it's giving a demand. In this sentence, notice how you is the subject, which goes unseen in the sentence itself. In higher education, declarative sentences are used most frequently. In academic writing, it might be best to avoid using other types of sentences unless your professor recommends otherwise, and unless you have a good understanding of the needs of the audience. To conclude this guide, we'll talk a little bit about style and sentence variety. As you can see, there are many different ways to convey ideas through sentences. Advanced writers use a mix of sentences to get their point across. For instance, simple sentences are great to use, but using too many consecutively could sound choppy and repetitive. Likewise, using several consecutive compound complex sentences may make your writing appear long and unwieldy. Having a writing style that uses various types of sentences is often the most interesting and enjoyable to readers. This is known as sentence variety and is one of the less discussed aspects of writing. Becoming more aware of the placement of your dependent and independent clauses and the amount of clauses you have placed will help you master sentence variety with time.